Good morning. I'd like to call to order the Board of Supervisors here for Thursday, June 20th. May we have the roll call, please?
Good morning, everybody. Let the record reflect that all supervisors are here and present, except Supervisor Alejo,
I think he's arriving in a little while.
who will be arriving soon.
Okay, and we, let's see, I don't know who's doing the interpretation services today. Is that Diego online?
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you. Diego, please give us the announcement.
Muy buenos días. Mi nombre es Diego Celis y en unión con Ana Rueda de Vidales seremos sus intérpretes en español para la reunión de hoy. Si usted está planeando hacer un comentario y necesita servicio de intérprete, por favor, hablar lento y suficientemente fuerte para que lo escuchemos. Favor hacer una pausa al final de sus oraciones para asegurarse de que tenemos la oportunidad de interpretarle antes de seguir adelante y por favor de no interrumpirnos mientras le estamos interpretando. Si se encuentra en la sala de la reunión y necesitan audífonos para escuchar en español, favor pasar al escritorio del guardia de seguridad para conseguir uno. Todos los audífonos se devolverán cuando abandone la reunión. Para aquellas personas que puedan estar en el webinar en inglés vía Zoom, pero hablan español, también pueden unirse a nuestro webinar en español si así lo desean. El número de identificación del seminario web en español se puede encontrar en nuestra página web. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Diego. And we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. County Council, would you like to lead us?
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Do we have any additions or corrections to the agenda?
Yes. For item number 2, under scheduled matters, the clerk of the board's office did receive a revised board report, as well as an attachment A and attachment B,
Okay, thank you.
of course.
And we'll open this for general public comments for items that are not on today's agenda. There'd be 2 minutes if anybody in the chambers would like to address items that are not on today's agenda. Yes, please come forward.
Is this not on?
There it goes.
There we go. Thank you. My name is Keith Rutzar. I'm the founder of the Giant Kelp Restoration Project in Monterey. And I first came to learn to scuba dive in Monterey in 1985, and I first fell in love with our kelp forests. In 2009, I learned to identify and count fish and target scientific protocols for reef check. And in October of 2013, we watched sadly as 22 species of sea stars were decimated by a wasting disease that turned them to goo. The ocean was overheated by the blob, a warm water event that lasted through 2016. Kelp needs cold, nutrient-rich water and sunlight to grow, and without that, the urchins emerged from the cracks and ate the kelp. Now urchins dominate around the Monterey Peninsula and have spread down the Big Sur coast to Morro Bay. In 2021, we received a sport fishing amendment change from the California Fish and Game Commission to call an unlimited number of sea urchins at Tankers Reef, is just east of the commercial wharf in Monterey. Volunteer scuba divers learned at local dive shops how to safely cull 750,000 urchins over 1,527 dives and grew an 11-acre kelp forest in a former urchin barren. The California Department of Fish and Wildlife, Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary, Ocean Protection Council, and Reef Check were our allies. But after 3 years, our amendment was allowed to sunset, and we no longer have a legal place to cull urchins and defend kelp forests. And we again petitioned the Fish and Game Commission to allow volunteer divers to restore kelp forest in the best places in the marine protected areas around the coast. So I want to work together with the county and begin kelp restoration and ecotourism, where Monterey County visitors can help restore the marine ecosystem and make it better than they found it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else? Yes, please come forward.
Thank you. My name's Jim Ferguson from Carmel. I've got copies of what I'm going to talk about for the board too, so appreciate it. It seems the STR discussions have gone on for years, and I've been speaking in front of the board and written several emails to you along the way. It looks like there might be a final conclusion soon. I'm here today to request 2 changes to your staff's new ordinance recommendations, and they are: 1, eliminate the 48% 5% TOT tax increase for STRs, or make them the same as the hotel's 0.5%. I'm not sure why we're singling out STRs versus hotels. Number 2, in the staff recommendation vacation rental types chart, which I have, and I think you all have that also, the homestay's rental contract limitation, I would like to see it gone to unlimited versus 1 stay per 7 days. We are owner occupied, so we do manage the guests very well. So why would we be bend the same way as just regular limited vacation rentals, having the same limits? They can have not more than 1 per 7 days, and that's the same with homestays. So we're requesting that we make that for the homestays be unlimited, since we are there and we are managing the guests as they're renting. In addition, the homestays contract, by having it such as 1 stay per 7 days, limits the number of rentals that we can make on an annual basis. Right now, there's 52 weeks in a year. With vacations that we take and holidays, the first part of the year is very slow. We probably will rent maybe 36 stays for that period of time. That makes about 50% reduction of my income.
Thank you for your comments. If you have some things you'd like to distribute,
Yes.
and, give them to the
Okay.
clerk. Thank you. Is there anybody else in the chambers that would like to speak on items not on today's agenda? You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, and thank you for your kind indulgence. I actually have to dash off to work, so I can't wait till item 3, so I'm just going to take this little bit of time. Thank you. My name, as I'm sure you know by now, is Elizabeth Tyler. It's lovely to see you all again. Last time I was talking to y'all, I could only do it by phone, so it's lovely to see your faces. I work with Monterey County Children's Behavioral Health on the Children's Juvenile Justice Team, a job I've held for coming up on 23 years. So, I know that you're doing the incredibly vital and important work related to budgeting and getting that done before July 1st. I understand and appreciate all the efforts that you make. My request is, or perhaps I should say I invite you, to please, as you're considering all of these factors, to remember your frontline staff. Remember the people who are helping to treat mental health disorders, who are keeping children safe and investigating allegations of abuse and neglect, who are creating healthier communities, who are creating safer communities, myself included, by reducing recidivism of juvenile offenders. And, consider the 2 proposals that you have related to bringing in additional income and revenue through the 2 tax initiatives that you have are under consideration. So, I'm terribly sorry I don't have more time, but I'd like to leave you with this little quote. My favorite personal quote is, "You see things as they are and ask why. And I dream things that never were and ask why not." In terms of creating a contract that your union representatives can accept that will make our lives a little bit easier, make it easier to retain staff, I don't see a whole lot of reasons why not if you utilize the 2 tax initiatives. Thanks, have a great day. I'm off to go do some treatment. Bye.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, members of the Board of Supervisors. My name is Danielle Dodge Sr. I was going to do my whole address and that kind of stuff. I'm the president of the Monterey Bay Central Labor Counselors. I'm with American Federation of Teachers, AFT 4400. I come to speak to you this morning. I know you have tough decisions that you're going to have to make this afternoon, and of course, going into the future. What I'm here to ask you is that we remember the working families that work for the County of Monterey, all across from Pajaro to King City, and some of the tough decisions that you have to go forward, and some of the unpopular decisions that you might have to go forward. But we're at a crossroads here in the Monterey Bay, and how we treat the working people of our area. We struggle to make the daily cost of getting back and forth to work, to be able to have housing, to be able to have adequate education and for our children. These are challenges that we're asking you, and some of the decisions that you have to make going forward to do what's best for the community, for the working families. You've heard my siblings from SEIU come up to this podium on several occasions and ask for that. Do you believe in them? To be able to acknowledge all the time that they spend away from their families and from the children in our community, and trying to make this community a better place. So once again, good luck with the tough decisions that you have in front of you. Please remember the working families. Create something that's new, and be forward thinking, and please, stay healthy, take care of yourselves, stay hydrated. Summer's coming up. But we ask you once again that there's working families all across our community that are asking for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else in the chambers that would like to speak on items on today's agenda? Would be 2 minutes. I see none. Online, do we have anybody?
Yes, on Zoom, we have DSA USA.
Yes, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Can you hear me? I'm not sure if you can hear me. I have some issues with connectivity. So I'm going to take the silence as that you can hear me. My question is regards to the two TAC initiatives that are being considered. Does this also consider Joby Aviation's ask and request for their $50 million, 226,000 square feet facility that's being built where ground has already broken in Marina, for their tax initiative that they're asking for taxpayers to pay and contribute to this design and construction that's going to happen? It is estimated that economic impact is to be $243 million coming in annually to Monterey County, but Joby is asking the County of Monterey to distribute a new property tax revenues to create this facility. Now, we know that we were in line for this particular company to come in and produce a massive production facility, which we were not chosen. Daytona, Ohio was chosen back in 2023. So the estimated large individuals that would be gaining employment through this has dwindled down to only 360 people throughout the Monterey County that will be inquiring jobs with this new facility. So my question with this to this board is this TAC initiative already included? And that 20 million that we're thinking about putting in reserves, is that going to be contributed to? And what is the ask from Joby Aviations? Because though we may be spending it now, we may see the repercussions of that in the future. So that is my question. I know that it was spoken about before. Is that included in today's discussions within the budget and those tax initiatives that are being proposed for this year? I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you for your comments. Those would be two separate items that would be taken up on different matters. To answer your question, yes, do we have anybody else online?
Yes, we also have a Walter Wagner.
Yes, Mr. Wagler, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor. Thank you, sir. I just wanted to reaffirm what the previous attendee from the audience spoke about on the sea urchin problem. I actually started diving in Monterey Bay in 1966. I don't dive in those cold waters anymore, but I'm very familiar with the way it used to be, with extensive kelp forests, teeming with fish. I think his program of having cleared out an area of barren urchin seabed and converting it back into a kelp bed was really phenomenal, and any assistance that he and his group can be provided would be welcomed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lastly, we have Joy on Zoom as well.
Yes, Joy, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. And I can't stay for the agenda item 5, but I'm a small business owner of small inns. I'm not like Hyatt or Marriott, and I'm not a billionaire. I'm not private equity. I'm not Wall Street. And the short-term rentals that go on Airbnb by the houses do have an impact on small little inns, but yet we have to adhere to the fire life safety regulations, ADA regulations. Just not too long ago, the county health checks my swimming pool. If he doesn't like the amount of chlorine, then I get penalized. I have to pay penalties here and there. And so it is very hard for the small little inns in Monterey County to compete against the big Wall Street and all these short-term residences. And I just hope you would take that all into consideration as we try to promote the area as a beautiful, unique boutique area to come to. And that's my input. I can't stay for it, but I appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else online?
Nobody else.
Okay, thank you. With that, we'll close general public comment and move on to scheduled matter item number 1, which is to adopt a resolution levying the emergency medical services system special tax.
Good morning, Honorable Chair Church, members of the board, and members of the public. My name is Karina Morano, and I'm the Administrative Services Assistant with the EMS agency. I'm here to ask the board for approval of a resolution to levy the EMS system special tax for fiscal year 2024-2025. We are levying the amount of $12 per unit, which is a standard amount that has been levied since fiscal year 2000 to 2001. This special tax is assessed in accordance with the Monterey County land use codes. The basic unit for the tax is a single-family dwelling. All other land uses are either a percentage or a multiple of that basic unit. Thank you for your consideration, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the board on the matter? I have one question. I realize it's been $12 per parcel, I believe it is, basically, per unit, I should say, since 2000, and the budget is 1.9 million. It's been a long time since that has gone up, and wanting to see what kind of impact that is having.
Expenses have been increasing since drastically every year, and so we are exceeding our expenses over the revenue that we are receiving.
Although has it been at about 1.9 million for the last 20 years?
1.8.
1.8, okay, all right. And just wanted to see if there was any.
It's stayed static.
Yeah, pretty static, okay. All right, thank you very much. With that, I want to take this out to the public. If there's any public comment on this in the chambers or online. This is for emergency medical services.
Yes, online we do have Keith Boyd.
Yes, Chief Boyd.
Sorry. Sorry, I was just trying to be switched to panelist. No comments.
All right, thank you.
It's been switched. Outside of that, we don't have anybody else on Zoom.
All right. With that, we'll close public comment. Yes, Supervisor?
I don't know if this is an appropriate question to ask at this point, but I think I will based on a comment that you made. So if you said that your expenses are exceeding your income, so how are you going to deal with that?
We have a reserve from the CSA 74 special tax that we have been kind of dipping into to kind of get us over the slump of not having enough revenue.
How much are we having to dip into that, and how long will it last at this rate?
Good question. I don't have that on hand right now. I can email you if you like.
Please, probably to the entire board.
Yeah, I will send that over to you guys at the end of the day.
Motion by Supervisor Alejo, second by Supervisor Askew. All those in favor with adopting this, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes.
Thank you.
Could I request we bring this back up again at some point when the additional information, when we receive the additional information? It sounds like it may be something that we need to address, perhaps not now, obviously.
We have looked into putting it on the ballot to increase, asking the taxpayers to have that increase, but we were told that we'd have to pay for our portion of putting it on, going to the the voters, and that was about $1 million, so that's most of our revenue.
Thank you.
Right, thank you for that information. With that, we'll move to item 2, which is to review the findings, recommendations for the 23-24 Monterey County Grand Jury. Mr. Chilos.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, and good morning, board members. We have 2 items that we have before you today that are responses to 2 reports from the civil grand jury. We're going to be bringing another set of reports to you July 9th on different topics with different time frame for response. The 2 reports today are Monterey County response to community members experiencing a mental health crisis, and then the second one is on fentanyl, our youth in crisis. And just at the outset, I'd like to thank and recognize the efforts of the civil grand jury, the 2023-24 civil grand jury, and all the hours of service and work that they've put into these very thoughtful reports, and particularly Christine Larabel, the foreperson. I believe some of the civil grand jury members may be in attendance either in person or via Zoom today. And as the board is aware, the civil grand jury performs a really important function of looking at government operations and investigating, making suggestions and findings and recommendations. And under the law, the board is obligated to respond to those within 90 days of receipt of the report. And so that's why we have these 2 items before you today. I'd like to thank at the outset, this has been a really collaborative effort to prepare the responses that are before you today, involving the County Administrative Office, CAO De La Rosa, Karina Bukanovich, Under Sheriff Boyd, Behavioral Health Director Katie Eckert, and her assistant Melanie Rhodes, or Deputy Director Melanie Rhodes. There are 5 findings and 5 recommendations regarding the mental health crisis report, and perhaps we could just look at that first. We could walk through them individually if the board prefers to do that. You have before you the draft responses prepared by our office, really with direct input from the health department and the sheriff's office. The way we would propose, if the board approves this today, what we would propose sending to the presiding judge is your responses as the board with memos attached to it from the health department and from the sheriff. The sheriff has their own independent time frame and directly responds to the presiding judge, but we would include that for reference and information. So as I said, this has really been a collaborative effort. Our consolidated response that's before you today really takes that input in and is presented to you for your consideration. So, Mr. Chairman, if you'd like, we could walk through each one, or if you want to see if the board has questions about any of this, it's really your prerogative.
Excuse me. I'll turn to the board just to see if we just want to go with the summary, if we want to dig into any of these particularly more deeply, or have any questions. Anybody? I'm going to take that your presentation is well enough. We obviously in our board packet have all the
yes,
the information.
And Mr. Chairman, if we might also then move to the fentanyl response, the same situation. There was a shorter or more limited grand jury set of findings and recommendations that the board's obligated to respond to, but you have the responses before you. In essence, the plan for spending that funding is being developed and will be back before the board, and that's so stated in the response.
Are there any questions from the board? Seeing none, I will take this out to the public on this matter on the grand jury response. Is there anybody in the chambers that would like to address this? Is there anybody online?
We have nobody online.
Second.
All right, close public comment, and we have a first motion by Supervisor Alejo, second by Supervisor Lopez. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
With that, we'll move to item number 3, which is to adopt the fiscal year 24-25 budget. Mr. Vega.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm just getting settled as for this presentation. Let's see if we could share a screen from this computer. Thank you for that. So the item today before you is the presentation for the adopted budget. So for the public and also others that have not been aware of what has happening with the county. We began this budgeting process as early as November of 2023, with the departments providing a current year estimate and forecast as we were identifying potential challenges with the budget for the new fiscal year. In excess of $20 million, we began working with departments on trying to address that projected deficit. We also had various community meetings throughout the county. One of them was here held at night so that the public will be able to do that, but we also went to several districts in the form of Zoom or in person to talk about the budget. And then we had with the Board of Supervisors a budget workshop on April 2nd. Then we had the budget hearings on May 29, where the Board of Supervisors provided direction. And that summary of the direction that was provided on May 29 is being presented today for adoption, along with the recommended budget that was presented also during that day. So before moving on to the actual presentation itself, I just want to again thank all the departments for their collaboration with our office on getting this recommended budget done, and also with the Board of Supervisors for the support on continuing to manage the resources of the county judiciously. So with that, we go into the actual presentation itself. We have the adopted budget that is being requested for approval today. That is estimated at $2 billion for next fiscal year in appropriations. It is a budget that is balanced, and it also funds almost 5,900 FTEs total for the entire county. So there, as we had discussed with the board and the public during May 29, there were certain recommendations that were made to modify the budget as recommended by our office. The summary is in front of you in this table. And in essence, the total amount of modification amounts to $5.2 million net. Of that, approximately $15,000 is estimated to go into next fiscal year for the excess funding from District 1 to be specifically allocated for the COVID memorial, if any funding is available after our reconciliation is over that year. We also have $973,000 for the Jewel settlement that will be used to fund the request from the health department for prevention and education campaign that they have presented to the board. And then we also have $4.2 million in an assigned fund balance that is distributed among the different departments that you see here on the screen. The following slide actually shows you the details of all the different requests that were presented in the previous slide. This is included as part of the public record so that the public will be able to see this. But you could see all the different things that were, in essence, okay by the board during the public hearings on May 29. I'm not going to read every single one of them here, but just highlighting that this is what we understood. The Board of Supervisors had provided direction with the majority of at least 3 board members saying that this is the funding they wanted to provide. And just with a caveat that a lot of these expenses that you see here in front of you are ongoing in nature, but the funding that is being used to fund these expenses is one time. So we're going to have a challenge going forward, even though we do have funding this year that is one time in nature for ongoing expenditures. We're going to have challenges as we go forward into next fiscal year because the one-time funding will not be available and the expenses will continue. So we have to be cognizant of that. As it is, we do have a balanced budget, but we also use the unfunded accrual liability portion of the funding that was being used for that program that was suspended and that was redirected for ongoing expenses. So it is a balanced budget, and we still have some challenges ahead of us. As we know, we still are in the middle of labor negotiations. We also have some potential additional state impacts. Some of the state impacts that were addressed during the budget hearings are being addressed here with one-time funding primarily in the Department of Social Services. So we do have challenges, but it is a balanced budget. So the next slide is meant to show you the funding that was available to be able to provide funding for modifications to the recommended budget. And the main focus is on an assigned fund balance, where we began the conversation as to how could we fund some of these requests that were coming to the budget hearings. The Board of Supervisors was very cognizant that they wanted to keep the contingencies on use, so that when we do have our next emergency, because it's not a matter of if, I think it's just a matter of when we have that next emergency, we'll have some flexibility to be able to respond to those emergencies. So the unassigned fund balance that we had available is what was used. Also, the dual settlement funds were used. And you could see the breakdown of how the unassigned fund balance was used. $4.2 million was used for the modifications that were shown on the previous screens. $2 million was set aside for a capital assignment, and the remaining is going to be put back into the strategic reserve so that we will have the ability to be able to respond to emergencies into the future again, in addition to the contingencies that you see in the screen. So what that means is that for the strategic reserve, we began the year with $63.7 million. After we put this $17.9 million back into the strategic reserve, we anticipate that we'll have an estimated balance of $56.6 million, which is a reduction from the beginning balance, but it is better than where we are today, where we are starting at about $38 million as of today. In addition to what I mentioned in the previous slides, also the board approved the funding from Fund 478, the Building Improvement and Replacement Fund, for all these different capital projects that you see here on the screen in front of you, which amount approximately $11.8 million. So with that, we'll be glad to answer any questions that the board may have regarding the adoption of the budget.
Questions? Board? I just want to get a confirmation that when we last discussed the budget, one of the items that was left at that time unresolved was the 3 positions on the Sheriff's Department for the directly related to the Hernandez settlement, and those are included now.
Correct, they are included. We double-checked the record, we looked at the recording, and we spoke to the supervisor in question, and we had at least 3 votes on that. Correct.
Just wanted the public to be aware of that, since it was left sort of unresolved at that point. Any other questions on that? Then I will ask the if for a for public comment on the budget, if there is anybody in the chambers. Yes, please come forward.
Good morning. My name is Liam. I'm staff with SEIU 521, the Public Employee Union here in Monterey County. Just wanted to appreciate all your work on passing a budget that invests in the community as much as you can, given the situation, and just to even though we're passing a budget now, to continue to push to invest in workers throughout the next year, despite everything going on with the state. So thanks again, and talk soon.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the chambers? Is there anybody online?
We have, I'm sorry, we have Walter Wagner online.
Yes, Mr. Wagner, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I just have a quick question about the Lake Nacimiento Lodge refurbishment. I was unfamiliar with what that was going to be. I wondered if the speaker could give a little exposition as to what is the refurbishment going to be and who's going to end up, who owns this facility.
I guess we could see first if Mr. Flores from Parks is online, and he would be better able to answer that then. Or I'll go to Supervisor Lopez if Mr. Flores isn't.
Happy to play Parks staff today. If you're, is that you, Brian? Go
Brian's
for it.
on, yeah.
I'm here. Thank you, Chair, Supervisors, members of the public. The Nacimiento Lodge refurbishment is a project to take care of roofing and siding and interior rehab to bring those units up to current day standards, we'll say, but they have not been ever remodeled. They're the original, it's the original situation since they were built in the 80s.
And they're owned by the County of Monterey. Just to be clear, it's a facility that we acquired as a result of a lawsuit that ended up with us obtaining that property. Investments have not been made in the infrastructure itself, so we're bringing those up to common expectations for our customers. Much like the hospitality industry in Monterey County, there's higher expectations for what folks get at that facility, and we're making the investment to bring those up to date.
Thank you. Is there anybody else online?
Nobody else online.
All right. That will close public comment on the budget and bring it back for the board. Supervisor Askew.
I just want to start by thanking our team, Sonia and De La Rosa, and the CAO team, our budget folks who work so hard all year to keep us in a really good, solid financial standing. The outreach that was done this year leading up to the budget, I've heard really good feedback both from our department heads as well as from the public. So wanted to say thank you also for having that inclusive process in place. I'm happy to support our balanced budget today, but just as a final, being on record with a couple things that I think are maybe not in the best interest of the future of our county are the taking money out of the uncompensated absences for district projects. We'll see how that plays out, but I worry about the implications of taking money that previous boards have very judiciously put aside for times where we may actually be in crisis and need it. The other thing that I'm not supportive of, I think we're taking the wrong step on, is moving away from pre-funding our PERS retirement obligations. I understand why it's being proposed, but I don't think it's in the best interest of the future of our county to be making those decisions right now. So having said that, I am happy to support the budget as it's presented. I think we have an amazing team. We've because of the conservative way in which we've proceeded, we've been able to maintain all of our services while continuing to invest in some of the capital needs that exist in the county. And I'll move adoption of the budget when the time is right. Thank you.
First and a second. First, I just want to see if anybody else has any comments about the budget from the board. Seeing none. Oh, Supervisor Alejo, go ahead.
Quickly, I just wanted to, first of all, I thank staff as well. I think it's a good budget, but just for Mr. Vega, this budget doesn't take into account, we are in negotiations with all our bargaining units, so anything negotiated, be it pay or benefits, that's unaccounted for in this budget, correct?
That is correct. So we will have to, if anything is agreed with the labor groups that increases the cost of the county, we will have to come back and present a specific action related to that, or work with departments on adjusting within their existing budgets.
Yeah, and I know I'm just saying that because it leads into the next topic that we have on the agenda, you know, because we do try to be fair and competitive, and we do try to retain our county employees. But I just wanted to make sure that the public knew that we're in that process right now. And that's why the next topic is also important, so that we could address those needs by our county family. Thank you.
Thank you. See no other comments from the board. We can put this to a vote then. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes, and we do have a budget for next year. With that, we'll move on to item 4, which is considering a resolution for putting on the ballot in this November, either increase in the TOT tax or the sales tax. Mr. Vega.
So thank you. Good morning again. So presenting this information is the culmination of several conversations we have had with the board early on as we were presenting the potential impacts that we were foreseeing as part of the forecast. Direction was provided by the board to explore different options. So we presented to the Board of Supervisors multiple options in the form of a memo a couple of months ago, where multiple options were explored. After that presentation, the board said come back with the defined, more defined list that includes sales tax and transient occupancy tax. So we came back with that a couple of meetings ago, and then we came back again during the budget hearings. And the last direction that we had was just to bring forward a specific language on potential action by the board to place either one of these options onto the ballot, or also none of them, depending on the overall will of the board. So just as a reminder, today what we are presenting, there are a couple of options that you see here in the screen. Option A or option B and or option C. So option A and option B are the same. The only difference is that one of those talks about a sales tax being presented to the qualified electors in the entire county, where option B is a sales tax of a 1% increase that will be presented to the qualified electors in the unincorporated area of the county only. And either of those options require a 4/5 vote, so the board will have to determine which of those options will be appropriate. In addition to that, another option for the board will be to adopt either A or B, or also do C or none of A or B, but only C. And in this option, or option C, we'll be asking for adopting a resolution to place a TOT ballot measure in the November election. We will raise the transient occupancy tax by 0.5% for hotels and by 5% for short-term rentals. And this is based on the direction that we received from majority of the board last time, but we will need a 4/5 vote in order for this one to be placed into the election. Also, it will be that the board says, no, we don't do any of this, and then I think that we will be done with this topic at this point, because I think that we will not have enough time to be able to prepare, given that we will not have enough meetings between now and August 9, when we had to provide this information to the elections department of the county, so that it will be placed on the ballot. By August 9, all the final documents will have to be presented. So today you have in front of you, as part of your packet, resolutions that accompany these actions. You also have draft ordinances that will become effective if the voters actually approve this. So if you vote today to place this into the election, we will work with the elections department on getting all the documents ready, submitted by August 9th. And then if the voters actually vote for any of these options that will be presented in the November election, then those ordinances will become effective. The sales tax will become effective 110 days after the voters approve it, and the TOT will become effective soon thereafter, following county code. I think that we will have to actually have the ordinance read and into the record and then adopt it. And it's typically 30 days after it's presented to you. So with that, I will not have a lot of other details related to the measures themselves, but I wanted to make sure that why are we presenting this to you? We're facing an environment, as we said, we have adopted a balanced budget, but we still have significant challenges that are being faced in the middle of, we're pending in labor negotiations. We still have state budget impacts that are still unknown. We have several wage studies that are being conducted as well. And we know that as a county, we're going to continue to deal with climate change and emergencies and significant challenges in the cost of housing for our workforce and also for all the residents of the county. So all of those type of elements are going to continue to impact the county's ability to continue to adopt balanced budgets and continue to provide valuable services to the county. On the sales tax side of the equation, I have presented this table before, where you see a comparison of Monterey County compared to other jurisdictions within the county. We are currently at 7.75%. So if the board decided to present to the voters the option to increase the sales tax from 7.75 to 8.75, we will still be on the low range of all the other jurisdictions within the county. And then currently, the 7.75% out of the 7.75% that we receive in the county only receives about 1% of that goes to the county general fund services. The rest of it is distributed, as you see, with the majority of that going into the state for different purposes. And we also have a couple of local measures that are part of the MST Special Transit District and also MST Safety Transactions and Use Tax. But I think that it is important for the public to know that even the sales tax is being charged by 97.75, only a small portion of that is coming to the County of Monterey. Related to the TOT, transient occupancy tax, you also see similar type of tables where you see the comparison within the county and also comparison with other jurisdictions outside the county, with some of the competitors I think that you will probably consider, like San Luis Obispo and Santa Cruz County being at a much higher rate currently. So with that, I'll just go back to the decisions that you have to make today so that you have some background information, on the public some background information. And with that, I will conclude my presentation and I will take it up to the board to decide. I know it is a hard decision to make, so I don't envy you your job, but I think we're at that point now where we have to make a decision as a county.
Do we have any questions here from the board before I go to the public? Yes, Supervisor Adams.
Thank you. Just one clarifying question. So we were saying that the sales tax increase would raise $28 million.
We're estimating that it'll be approximately $29 million. Correct.
$29 million. How much of that will come to the county?
That will come all to the county.
All to the county. I thought that, but as I read the information again, I kept thinking, I just want to be sure about that. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll take this out to the public. Is there anybody in the chambers that would like to address this issue? Please come forward. You have 2 minutes.
Good morning, Chair and Supervisors. My name is Hartmut Ott. I'm the General Manager at
If you can pull the microphone a little closer up to you. Yes, thank you. I understand the problem.
There you go. Is that better? All right. So, good morning, Chair and Supervisors. My name is Hartmut Ott. I'm the General Manager at Bernardus Lodge and Spa. I enjoyed my first few minutes listening to you as I'm soaking in the chambers of the supervisors. I was related to Barbara Shipnuck, who served our county for many years. Alan is my brother-in-law, and so I have huge appreciation for your service to the county as well. We need to hold on to the fact that our TOT is lower than competing destinations. It's a competitive advantage that we want to keep. And why is this important, and how can we raise revenue otherwise? I'll explain. If we were to raise our occupancy by 3%, then we could raise between $12 to $15 million in sales tax through the ancillary spend of guests in our restaurants, shops, aquarium, and so on. How do we raise occupancy by 3%? Certainly we can do so with more drive-in transient business and vacationers from abroad, and we need them desperately. But what we really need is group. Group business, however, looks at the bottom line, because at the bottom line, the numbers are big. We're talking about large quantities, big groups, big numbers. Our destination is so diverse that if there's one that could grow by 3%, then we're positioned actually really well. Therefore, we should focus on raising awareness as much as possible while maintaining our edge of having a lower TOT, so we're best positioned to secure big groups of business. At Bernardus, we also have a financial skeleton called the budget, and if we're challenged with making our margins, then we look at the revenue side of the house, and that's the preferred way to go. But we also evaluate the expense side of the house. And so I would encourage that we do the same thing at this level as well, impact revenue as well as expense. The Rose Garden at Bernardus is in full bloom. I invite all of you down for more conversation. I'd love to learn more of your perspective and share mine as well as hotelier.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Church and members of the board. My name is Kirk Gaffel. I'm the president of the Big Sur Chamber of Commerce, and I wanted to speak today as well to discourage the board from considering an increase in the transit occupancy tax, particularly focusing on the Big Sur area, which is undergoing an enormous economic challenge for its businesses and its employees that goes back now for over a year and a half and is expected to continue well into its second year, with Highway 1 not being expected to reopen to the south until possibly late fall of this year. So we've had a year and a half going on, at least 20 months at the current projection, where Highway 1 has had reduced traffic by well over a third. This has impacted lodging capacity, the available number of hours and jobs for employees, and we are still recovering from the added impacts of the 7-week closure to the north at the Rocky Creek slip out. A month later, traffic is returning, but it's not even at the same level where we were last year with the road closed to the south. So the economic burden on the Big Sur community and its lodging industry has been severe, and it will be further challenged by an increase in the TOT, which will reduce the competitive advantage of our hotels and lodging accommodations for not only the Big Sur coast in particular, but also the county as a whole. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you.
Hello and good morning. Thank you, Board of Supervisors, for all of the great work that you do. It's really great to be here today. My name is Ben Perlmutter. I'm the managing partner from the Big Sur River Inn. And so I'll be reiterating some of the points that Kirk made, but from the perspective of a business owner ourselves. My family has had the business for about 35 years. the entirety of my life, we've seen rising costs across the board, but that's especially been true since the COVID-19 pandemic. As we all know, inflation has hit all of us in a very difficult way. With that, we've seen extremely high rising costs around our insurance, around wages that we pay to our employees to help them cover the costs of their own expenses in their own lives. And when we look at the future, given the things that Kirk mentioned, we've seen a negative impact from the road closures for the last year and a half. We're seeing more likely environmental issues going forward, natural disasters. Obviously, the Rocky Creek closure was not a good experience either. Essentially, our business is having a very challenging time as it is. Family-owned, locally operated for the last 35 years. And when we look at things like the TOT, we see only more difficulties in our future if that were to rise, right? And to the point also made earlier, whether it's an increase of expense that we pass on to our guests or we eat that cost ourselves, we're going to see fewer visitors, we're going to see less revenue. That's going to impact the time that we're able to give to our employees and the hours that they work. And from our perspective, it would be very damaging to see a rise in the TOT. And so I'm asking you today that we do not go that route. Thank you.
Good morning, Supervisors. Rick Aldinger, Chair, Government Affairs Committee for Monterey County Hospitality Association. I want to thank all of you. I know this has been a challenging conversation, and I appreciate your engagement and thoughtfulness in this matter. Monterey County's tourism industry has yet to recover from the pandemic. We've heard that here already. Therefore, this industry needs our support to continue the recovery, and certainly we don't need more roadblocks to that recovery. TOT revenues will grow with the health of the hospitality industry. As we recover, we see this happening already. We should do whatever we can to let that growth continue and build momentum. Our partners in Big Sur have a long road ahead, making up for road closures that have lasted well over a year and are still not resolved. Polling indicates there is voter support for a sales tax increase or a TOT increase. Keep in mind that those polled were presented with just one question, a sales tax increase or a TOT increase, not both. History at the ballot box tells us that when multiple tax increase measures are on the ballot, the chance of success for each measure goes down. A TOT increase will make up only a fraction of the budget gap, while a sales tax increase will likely cover the deficit. If we put both measures on the ballot and only the TOT increase passes, where will the rest of the shortfall come from? Or worse still, what if this causes both measures to fail? We all want to provide essential services to the residents of Monterey County. Best way to ensure we're able to do so is with a sales tax increase while leaving TOT where it is.
Thank you, Mr. Aldinger.
Thank you.
I'm not height inflicted. I need to move this down. I'm Ed Mitchell, Prunedale resident in the unincorporated area. I've worked with 3 of the supervisors previously on county or community issues. I tried to be helpful then. I'm trying to be helpful today. By providing a perspective of what the taxpayer is seeing, the locomotive of taxes that are coming down the line to hit him or her in November. It's not just our taxes and the county taxes. It is also taxes that the state initiatives are showing, one of which is going to gut, if it passes, Proposition 13. That proposition was put in place to help families that were getting ran out of their homes, homeowners, because of taxes. That problem hasn't passed. For some reason, the state is moving forward. So I, as a taxpayer, is looking at, well, I can get ran over by 2 or 3 trains, the locomotive taxes, and the counties. And I think what my assessment is similar to what was just talked about. The probability that taxpayers are going to vote for the sales tax, I think, is going to be much lower and the probability of passing the TOT tax is much more likely. And so if you can keep the TOT tax below other TOTs in surrounding counties on the coast and still leave them with some type of competitive advantage, I think that is your better choice. You have to consider the outcome of what if both taxes fail, or what if one of them fails. What are you going to do then? And I suggest that you move forward with putting the TOT tax in a competitive format, and that's the one should be voted on. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the chambers? Yes.
Good morning, Chair Church and Supervisors. I'm Janine Chikrat. I can't even believe I'm going to say what I'm going to say because I'm an anti-tax person on all different levels. But when I look at what's in front of you today and the vast difference in terms of us being at the 7.75% sales tax, and that's very low throughout the whole state of California, not only just here. I look at the revenues that you need for this county. It makes it very logical to go to the conclusion that sales tax is the way to go. We are a community and a county that is spread out everywhere. The reality is the people that are in that lower tax areas are already paying the higher taxes because they're shopping and buying gas in the areas where there are the higher taxes, regardless if of where they live. So I encourage you today to make the hard decision. I do strongly believe that it's just one measure that should go on the ballot. I know there's arguments pro and con on that, but given the challenges that the county has and the amount of revenue you need, I think it's extremely important to seriously consider the sales tax. And I think it should be put out to a county-wide vote as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in chambers? Yes.
I won't speak long. You guys have kind of already heard our position on the revenue measures. We, as the county workforce, a lot of those folks live in the unincorporated areas. A lot of our members, they have historically and will continue to be willing to tax themselves to, be able to better address the vacancy issues, to get them support at work, get them, colleagues in those seats, to help the people they serve. And in general, SKU 521 will support all revenue measures to fix this situation. We need as much money as possible. So just know, we've historically and we'll almost certainly continue to support with boots on the ground and financially kind of any efforts to pass these measures in the November ballot. So appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you. I see nobody else in the chambers that would like to speak on this. Do we have anybody online?
Yes, on Zoom we have Christian.
Yes, Christian, you have 2 minutes to speak on this, on the items here before us.
Hello, my name is Christian Hargy, and I appreciate you allowing me to speak today. Yeah, I'm a family-owned operator of a short-term rental in South County, and it's in a small town of Bradley. We're just north of the county line. We have a really unique place, and we compete with the vacation rentals in Monterey, San Luis County. And I strongly oppose any tax increase for the TOT whatsoever. It's a really unique place that we have, and we bring people in that visit all areas of Southern Monterey, and yet, and we have no influence in any hotels whatsoever in the area. I'm all for a balanced budget, but I'm against any type of tax increase. But I'm also for fairness. When you say something like, oh, let's do the short-term rentals 5% more, and the other one's just 1%, that's not fair. We're in a society nowadays where we want to treat everybody fairly. We want to make sure nobody's treated different. Yet if we go with that one portion of the proposal and we're treated unfair, what does that show where we're heading in direction? It's crazy. As far as reading what the money will go to for infrastructure, in the town of Bradley, which hopefully some of you have gone through, I'm sure Supervisor Lopez has, it's a small, unique town, but the roads are terrible. Here you're going to increase this tax and hopefully it goes to infrastructure, yet the road between East Garrison to 101 is the most terrible road in the county. I know because I've worked in the county for many years.
Thank you for your comments.
Oh, it's over? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
You had your 2 minutes.
We also have a Richard Matthews on Zoom.
Yes. Mr. Matthews, you have 2 minutes.
Hello, my name is Richard Matthews. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. I am one of the directors of the Monterey County Vacation Rental Alliance, and we advocate for short-term rentals, as you probably know. We oppose a TOT rate that's higher than hotels. The resolution in front of you proposes that the rate should be increased by 5%, but there's no data supporting why short-term rentals should have a higher rate. In fact, there really is no data that the county staff have ever provided to that extent. Short-term rentals are favored by many families, especially multi-generational families. Who will pay this extra 5% on short-term rentals? The renters will. Let's start treating the travelers equally, whether they choose a short-term rental or a hotel. Let's not have one category of renters, travelers, that pay more. The resolution before you reveals that not one penny of that 5% addition would go to anything related to short-term rentals. Again, we oppose that 5% increase. We think the rate should be the same for hotels and short-term rentals. Thank you.
Thank you.
We also have a Karen Cameron on Zoom.
Yes, Karen, you have 2 minutes.
Karen, are you there?
Do we have another person?
Yes.
We'll come back.
USA.
Yes, USA, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I'm going to return back to my question with regards to this general fund money being utilized for job aviation. When they were determined to bring their big facility here, there was talk about rebates, tax rebates and incentives, but now they're going to be coming and asking for these in this new development construction when they've already been awarded 9.8 million grants in November from the California Competes program
I'm
to
sorry,
help finance it.
but this isn't
Now,
really the issue before us on Joby. This is on the tax increase. And as
Yes,
I
sir,
had
but
mentioned earlier when I addressed your question, these would be 2 different issues that would come before the board. This issue on Joby is not part of this.
It's still component to it because this money will be determined at a later time. So it does coincide with this. Now back to my comment with regards to that, when we do decide what this money is going to be, whether we put this on the ballot or not, we are going to be deciding where this money is going to be done. And when we talk about fairness, we are not talking about fairness. TOT brings in so much money in general. We don't have working class people talking about this today because they're not here, but we do have hotel general managers that are coming down the pipeline to talk about this. Forecasting these type of increases is supposed to be done at that level through the general manager, their budgeting and all of that. We're talking about putting ahead visitors that come into our city, our county, ahead of the working class. Yes, we do have many municipalities that are already charging the 9.25. And whether you go to Seaside, Salinas, or anything else, you're going to be charged that. Our residents are being charged that. So we're paying it to a certain extent. But to say that it's fair to put it on the residents who live here that are the working class for these high-end hotels like Carmel Valley Ranch, like Bernardus, they're already anticipating these big hikes, and they should be if they are not, because you are responsible for that funding that comes down and those individuals that you're bringing in. Groups come in all the time. We know that by Concord de Lagans. We know that by the cars at Laguna Seca. So for us to continue to put it on the working class with them not even having an opportunity to come here at 10 a.m. in the morning to talk about this is ridiculous. We're not fairly looking at this as a general conciseness of how we're going to bring revenue into Monterey County. We are good at spending your money, but we're not good at saving it.
Thank you for your
TLT
comments.
should be charged.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else online?
Yes. Going back to Karen Cameron.
Yes, Karen Cameron, you have 2 minutes on this matter. Do we have anybody else besides the speaker?
No, she's the last speaker.
Okay. It's last call for you, Karen, if you would like to speak on this matter. Okay, we'll have to, if there's nobody else online then, and nobody else in the chambers here, then we'll just have to close public comment and bring it back here to the board. I'm going to, I guess I'm going to start here. I'm still, my position is kind of unchanged. I think both of these should be on the ballot. I do think the sales tax, if there's going to be an increase on it, it should be solely for the unincorporated area. I had been in favor of actually not 0.5%, but 1.5% on the TOT. But I do know there are some areas like in Big Sur that are suffering, and one of the different option I want to propose onto this would be for an increase in the TOT, but it would be suspended until maybe 26, January 1st, 26, before it would take impact, or even 27, and then would go at 0.5% for the years after that. So there'd be some time for the concerns of the industry to adjust to this. There'd be some years off onto that, and after the board's done making discussions, I plan to make a motion for that for consideration. But I would not be able to support, if that does not pass, I would not be able to support the position on the sales tax unless it was just limited to the unincorporated residents, because I just think there's a process issue here, and I want to have this open for the people to decide who are going to be affected by it the most. Anybody else on the board would like to make comments here? Yeah, go ahead, Supervisor.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you to all our staff, and thank you to the board we brought this up a few times, so it's always good for the public to have numerous opportunities on a big question that we're deciding today. I think, first of all, I wanted to stress how, even though this is a general, we're talking about a general sales tax, I think we have to learn from what other counties have done and who have successfully been able to educate voters how these funds will be used to address the greatest priorities. And our CEO had some polling done on what our residents desire to see if we were going to move forward on a sales tax. And among the very top was affordable housing, homelessness, road repairs and infrastructure, as we heard from some of the members of the public, the cost of living, crime and drugs, among other things. But I think some of the other issues, obviously, with climate change, we've had flooding, we've had fires. There's some other emergency situations that are top of mind, and I think we have to really focus in on if we're going to be successful, educating voters that we're going to use these additional revenues to address the most pressing priorities facing Monterey County. Second point, I wanted to stress that we should not disenfranchise any of our voters. And the reason is, and it's logical, is that 75% of our residents, although they live in the city limits, it is more likely than not that they're the major payers of the sales tax, even in the unincorporated areas. And outside of the visitors. And I look to the anecdotal evidence. You look at what Pebble Beach Company generates, very significant amounts of sales tax for Monterey County. The city of Monterey, which is the other anecdotal evidence, I think somebody previously mentioned that 67% of the sales tax in that city is generated from visitors to that city. And I tried to get the data, but our staff said that to acquire the breakdown from HDL about who actually pays the unincorporated tax was very expensive to get that data in a short amount of time. But my feeling is the majority of people paying that tax in the unincorporated county are actually residents that live in the cities just by sheer probability, and visitors by the majority. So they should be entitled to also vote on this question on increasing the sales tax for the county, because they are going to be payers of that as well. And as voters, they should be entitled to have that opportunity to weigh on this question, just as Santa Cruz County did successfully just last March 5th in their Measure K. The other point I wanted to bring up is that there's a lot on the ballot question. As we were just speaking a few minutes ago, there was breaking news that the California Supreme Court struck down that anti-tax measure that really threatened local government's ability to put future tax measures on the ballot. So it will not be on the November ballot after all. Thank God for the California Supreme Court to make a just decision, because it was really going to challenge and make very difficult how local governments address their future needs and their ability to raise revenue for decades to come. So I think it was a just decision by the California Supreme Court. But there is a lot of other issues on the ballot in November. The legislature, I was just there the last couple of days in Sacramento. They're negotiating until June 27 what statewide bonds are going to be on the ballot. There's polling by the Public Policy Institute of California, the PPIC, on what are voter views are on some of these statewide bonds. It looks difficult. And that, for me, that just stressed that it's important to focus on one issue, not to put multiple issues. And we've talked last meeting that some of these other cities might look to extend a tax measure or put a new tax measure on the ballot. And so for the county, I think it's important to focus on one ballot measure that we're going to voters for, and that should be the sales tax, as it generates the most revenue. And I think we have to keep the message clear that we're asking for one ask from the voters this time around, and then put our efforts to build a united campaign. And that's what my last point was, just to that, is I think here we have an opportunity to try to build the most support across the political spectrum in Monterey County, to have a united campaign, to have support from labor, from hospitality, from the business community, from our nonprofit partners. I think now more than ever, that kind of united campaign is what is going to make this successful. We know what voters are feeling, but when you look at other efforts locally, and I look to our neighbors to the north, people say, oh, well, that's Santa Cruz County. But actually, if you look at South Santa Cruz County, which is heavily working class, Latino, similar demographics to my district here in Salinas, it passed there too. And the sales tax passed, and hospital parcel tax passed just a few weeks ago. But what the difference is that there was a united voter education effort to make the best argument, generate the greatest appeal among voters to have that measure be successful on Election Day. And I just want to bring up, what if we don't? Well, I looked at what other cities have done. Santa Cruz County had a sales tax that failed in the last gubernatorial election in 2022. They came back to the voters and had a strategic effort to educate voters on why it was needed for that city, and the voters approved it this time around. I don't want to go through it twice, but I think we have to realize that there's a golden opportunity here to build as much support as possible, have our hospitality partners on board and supporting a sales tax measure too, and to have a winning message to the voters, of all voters of Monterey County, to support a sales tax when everybody has a chance to weigh in and decide this on the November general election. And that's where I'm at, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Askew.
Yeah, so I'm still curious how we're going to get to 4/5 vote to place either one of these on the ballot. I think the need for additional revenue is clear to me, and I don't know that my position from previous conversations has changed. So I'll just, for the record, I want to really appreciate how respectful and engaged hospitality has been in the conversation. Thank you for being present. Thank you for communicating what the needs of the industry are. Our workforce has also been very clear and consistent about the ways in which vacancies and pay rates that we're struggling as well to provide for the many mandated responsibilities that the county is required to provide for. Our sheriff continues to show up every budget cycle asking for millions of additional dollars, tens of millions of additional dollars to ensure public safety. And our responsibility here is to make sure we're providing that balance of budget and revenue. So given that, the polling that we had was limited, but it did show that there was strong support from District 4 residents who I represent for both the TOT and the sales tax, as was polled. So in representing my residents, I'm going to continue advocating that we place both items on the ballot. I think that the other thing that our limited polling showed is that a TOT request would almost certainly be passed. I think Glenn's suggestion, or Supervisor Church's suggestion about triggering that out, there will never be a good time for any industry to have additional expenses. But I think that that's a fair approach to compromise. In regards to the sales tax and whether or not we put that on the to vote for the full county or just unincorporated residents, the legislative intent and the legal issues with having a countywide vote on that are compelling to me, lead me to believe that unincorporated voters should be the ones voting on an unincorporated sales tax. And I think that if we ask for the full, if we move forward and have the full county vote on a sales tax, we will end up with litigation expenses and a lawsuit. I don't think that's the right path for us to take. So having said all of that, I look forward to supporting your motion, Glenn, when you make it. I think your compromise is fair and reasonable. It keeps us, puts the sales tax on the ballot. It adds a TOT with a timing initiative. So we're giving folks time to recover, and if we could find some compromise in terms of maybe a 1%, which again keeps us below the competitive rates elsewhere. So I would hope that we can find a way to get support for that. Thank you.
Sure. Supervisor Adams-Lopez, do you have any comments?
I have comments, but I have a couple of questions that I wanted to ask as well. So I wanted to find out, is it possible for us to put a measure on the ballot that will not take effect until 2026 or 2027? As you know, a TOT increase in that regard?
I believe it is. The trouble is the resolutions before you, and I'm looking at Kelly if I'm wrong.
Do not imply that.
So we'd have to come back with different resolutions.
Okay, so I guess I was going to go forward with that. If in fact, why would we do it now then? Why wouldn't we just wait until 26 to bring it forward? And I say that because at that point, the appetite of both hospitality, perhaps everything will be back to normal, and you would want to be making it a much higher increase than what is in the resolution now.
You certainly can do it at a later time. I think the thought was to take advantage of the election in November.
Federal election.
Right.
Okay, and then with the way that either measure, I think this might be a Kelly question, with the way that the measures are drafted now, the language, it's the same. Is that, what kind of a return would we need from the voters to pass that?
The sales tax and the TOT proposed ballot measures are general taxes, so it's just a majority of the voters.
Plus one.
And on the resolution piece that Susan was mentioning, I think if the board is clear today, we could take that information and appropriately update the resolution as long as staff is very clear on what you're approving, and we can make those changes in the ballot measure language and then the associated changes in the proposed ordinance that's attached to the resolution.
Thank you for that. I think those are my only questions, and I'll wait to hear from my colleague to the right before I make any other further comments.
Thank you. Yeah, I have to be frank. I don't think my opinion has changed much from the last meeting, only further entrenched by conversations I've been able to have with the cities in my jurisdiction. We've had some really good back and forth about the potential impacts of having multiple items on a ballot. Where they are, specifically, 2 of my jurisdictions are also looking at doing sales tax initiatives to come up to the maximum amount. And so we're talking about multiple items, which was my concern before, being placed. They also have concerns about TOT within their jurisdictions, but aren't looking to address that now and would prefer that we do them together at a future date. That's the request and conversation with the jurisdictions that we share jurisdiction with down in South County. And so at this time, I'm still supportive of seeing a sales tax go on the ballot, even if it's above the 1%, but I'm not supportive of seeing an increase at TOT at this time in order to align with folks in South County to the question of TOT in the future. I remain supportive of a slightly higher amount for our short-term rentals. That was initially my proposal, and for the additional impacts to those communities, I do think that there's an opportunity, especially given what we saw in the polling. I continue to look for, if we're going to move forward with the sales tax initiative, additional emphasis to be placed on some of the key issues raised by the community through the polling, specifically road and infrastructure projects, which I think continue to be the bane of existence for many folks who live rurally. I will share that I do acknowledge that there are extreme impacts to some communities like Chular who have transportation issues, who will be purchasing only from 1 or 2 markets in town. So while we all talk about Carmel Valley, we all talk about Pebble Beach, there are impacts to these communities as well. And so I want everyone to know that I'm not taking that decision lightly, but when I look at the impact of 1% and the gap we are trying to fill at this time, I think that makes the most sense for us. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And as, what's that?
Thank you.
Supervisor Adams, go right ahead.
That's all right. I just want to clarify with something that Chris said. Are you then supportive of having the vote be only in the unincorporated area?
As I was before, I didn't talk about that. I'm not extremely entrenched on either side of that. I see the logic either way. I really do. If it's going to get us to 4, then I'm happy to go one direction or the other. But I think broader, I agree with the point that so many of folks who live in the unincorporated shop in cities, we're already paying that additional amount. I look at my family's ritual every weekend growing up. Sunday mornings, we woke up, we drove to Salinas, we went to the mall, we went to Costco, we did all our shopping for the week and drove back to King City.
Did you forget church?
Well, trust me, we did not forget church, correct?
I thought you might have forgotten
Grandfather was a Lutheran minister.
Your
No way
mother would
we
not be
missed that
happy
one.
with
Oh,
you.
no, she would not. I apologize, Mom. I know you're watching. But yeah, so, looking at that and understanding that in my portion of Monterey County that I'm lucky enough to represent, there's not a ton of businesses on the unincorporated besides some of the small mom and shop bakeries, all-purpose markets, a couple big businesses in the form of like RDO Tractor, who I think will be impacted by this, and those large purchases, that additional percentage, it's significant money that's going to flow in. But on the big sense, when I think about those folks who live in the unincorporated areas are going into the cities to shop, right, for their basics and day-to-day. So for me, I'm not as entrenched in that it only needs to be unincorporated personally. For those reasons, I don't have a large shopping center in unincorporated like Supervisor Church does, so I get why he feels the way he does. I'm acknowledging that. At this point, it's not a thing that I've got my feet buried in on.
Is it appropriate to ask if we could have kind of a breakout of where we all stand, or where the full vote stands at this point?
Well, I think that just depends on what the question is. There's a lot of variabilities here at this point, as it depends what you're proposing. I mean, probably just going to have to do a bunch of emotions here and see what happens at this point. I mean, I've heard quite a bit from quite a number of people in my district who are really concerned about that if there's a sales tax being proposed, it should be unincorporated. And I can't speak where Supervisor Alejo goes to shop. Maybe he does come out to North County, but I know that you look at Castroville, you look at the two Prunedale shopping centers, Pajaro, their business is basically for an unincorporated area. There isn't a big influx of Salinas folks coming out to Safeway and Prunedale or Ace Hardware. And I know CNN Tractor would also be one of our ones that would be affected, as well as there's a auto dealer in Pajaro who would also be affected on a large purchase item. So again, I'm really committed that if we're going to go for this sales tax, that it be by unincorporated resident. I can't support otherwise onto that. Trying to find a way to work this TOT out and somehow, and I wasn't necessarily proposing that, and I don't know if this is going to make things too complicated and in terms of a ballot measure, but wasn't necessarily thinking that short-term rentals should be getting a delay, that 5% would be taking impact immediately. But maybe go to 2026 before we have a 0.5% increase and on the more traditional rentals, vacation stay such as hotels, and then perhaps I'd be even open to going towards another 0.5% in 28 and another 0.5% in 30. That puts us way down the line on the impact, and that just brings it up to line with the cities that are and our neighboring counties, which have TOT taxes of that amount or around those percentages. So that's where I'm going to be making a motion on right here. I would would say I also have some concerns about being challenged if we do extend the sales tax beyond the unincorporated areas to the incorporated areas because of what is happening in Santa Cruz onto that. So with that,
Mr.
Yes.
Would you like a little, just for information? I think at this point regarding the sales tax, we do have 4/5 vote on having that be voted upon only by those in the unincorporated area. So at least we know we've got one box checked.
Well, yeah, if I know Supervisor Alejo is not in favor of that. I don't know. Supervisor Lopez says he's someone on the fence.
Yeah, and I'm there.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
You want to
And I just want to speak to that point because I know I'm in the minority. I will not be favoring it because I think this board would be setting itself for failure. The polling shows that the voters within the city favor this, and that could really make the difference on a ballot question that is uncertain. We're going to need every voter that could help get this across the finish line, having the possibility to vote on it if we're going to be successful. Otherwise, you're setting this up for failure, and you will own it on the November general election day. If it fails, and it fails by less than 1%, and if it could have made the difference to have the voters in the cities make this a winning campaign, then you own that failure. I'm not for that because I know that the polling shows having the voters, one, doesn't disenfranchise them to having a say. Number two, it helps this ballot measure have the best chance of winning in November. The other thing I would say that it would require, whatever we put on the ballot, it's going to require each of us, if you support it, and this one I don't, but you need to put in the work. This doesn't happen by coincidence. There's a lot of work and logistics that need to be put into a winning effort to convince the voters why the sales tax is merited at this time, to raise awareness, to raise the revenue needed, to get the endorsements from across the political spectrum. I'm just saying, if you vote to do this, and you are hurting our chances for having a successful campaign, I hope that each of you will put in the work that is needed to have a successful campaign. I walked on those efforts for the hospital, for the sales tax in Santa Cruz County. I know what it takes. It takes a lot of your voluntary time to build the coalition and to educate voters. I hope that you're willing to put in the work that is needed, because if it is only unincorporated and you're going to disenfranchise all the voters in District 1, I'm not going to support that. Thank you.
Regarding the concern that having multiple items on the ballot aren't going to pass here as well, I think Supervisor Lopez mentioned there's two cities that are going to have sales tax. So you would have 2 sales tax issues up there, plus the city of Salinas is considering a ballot measure to extend its 1% sales tax. So we're already looking at, in the incorporated areas, of a directly competing vote on sales tax. And perhaps that's, I don't know which cities they are in South County, but we're talking about close to, if you add them in Salinas, you're talking about close to half the population of the county right there. And that's going to lead to some real confusion and potentially voting down all those sales tax items.
It's such a conundrum here, so if you could pass this back. I have a lot of mixed feelings as well. I like the idea, Glenn, if you're just wed to not doing sales tax only, I think that's a question that I would have.
Well, as I said, I'm going to want to put a motion down here on the TOT anyway, just so we get a feeling from the board. Although I'm pretty certain there's not 4 votes onto it, even with the modified proposal that I'm putting forth with a delayed implementation. But if we're going to go down the sales tax, then again, I feel it really has to be unincorporated residents. I mean, that's the way it is in the cities. In the cities, it's the residents of the city that are voting, and in the county, it's the residents of the county. And obviously, you have some unincorporated industry in your district. And I do quite a bit into mine too. And Castroville and Prunedale, I'm sure, generate some pretty sizable amounts of revenue out of there. And what I've heard from the people in my district is, this is going to come up. They want to be able to make the decision, and they don't make the decision on the cities. Then they just don't feel it's fair. So I've got to really represent the people who express this to me.
I think I'm still struggling with the having 2 competing measures for ourselves, or not really competing, but 2 tax measures on the ballot for the unincorporated people. And I think, as the language would be, it would be totally separate. Is that not correct? One would be vote on a sales tax. The other would be vote to increase TOT.
That's correct.
Okay, yeah. So I think that's going to be problematic, because I do worry, even though it's not a significant amount, there will still be some opposition to that, which I think would take away from our efforts outlined very clearly by Supervisor Alejo, that it's going to take on all our behalf to get the sales tax passed. And I worry about, having both on the ballot for the unincorporated folks to vote on. And I want to make sure that if we were to do this, that, to have the both on the ballot, that we would eliminate as many people being against us as possible, because we're going to need everybody, all hands on deck, to be able to pass the sales tax. So I think I would be more supportive of just going ahead with the sales tax at this point and having it be only in the unincorporated area. And then at a later time, maybe even, next year, put the TOT on it when it's a smaller ballot that I think would have a resonating appetite among the voters.
Well, I understand your position onto that. I'm being that we're here debating all this. I'm going to throw forth that one motion anyway on tying these 2 together, and we can vote on that, and then we can move from there. So my motion would be to have the 1% sales tax and include just the unincorporated voters onto there. and that the TOT be the 5% being for the short-term rentals being immediate implementation, but the for the non-short-term rentals, it would not take effect until 26. That would be 0.5%, and then in 28, in January 1st, 28, would be another 0.5%, and January 1st of 2030 would be another 0.5%. And that's going to be what my motion is at this point. Second. I don't know if we need to have any discussion. We probably put this to a vote at that point. So all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Mary, did I hear you say anything? All right.
Well, I think it's moot, right? Because it's going to need
It
four
is,
fifths.
because it takes 4 of you.
In
Right,
reality, I can see
Yeah, but you
the-
have to vote.
You can.
Okay, I'm going to vote yes.
Okay. All right. So it fails on a 3-2 vote. I do want to mention that both, on the TOT and, as Supervisor Lopez has mentioned, maybe on the sales tax, but on the TOT, we've often traditionally used money from the formula out to help roads, and that, obviously the short term, not sure it's going to short term, but the sales tax, isn't something we're going to be able to say we're going to spend here today, because that's not going on the ballot. But hope it does state on the ballot that it would be under consideration for that and the wording. Anybody else wants to make a motion at this point?
So I'll fly one. I move that we approve the sales tax as the single item that this county's Board of Supervisors is putting on the ballot, 1%, and that it is to go to the unincorporated voters in the county only.
Is there a second? Second, Mr. Raskin?
Before we vote on that, I'm just curious, Supervisor Alejo's point about percentages, what were the positive percentages in I know we had a slide before, I don't know if you still have that handy with incorporated versus unincorporated.
You're talking about the polling results?
Correct.
I do have them, but I'll have,
Talking about.
let me get to the slide.
I thought it was about the same, about 6 out of 10, if I remember correctly.
No, it was different, but it was almost like a conflict, for the unincorporated area. So it was not the same. It was like 60, in the high 60 or 60% or so, 61, 62. When you look at the entirety of the county, and when you look at the unincorporated area only, it was closer to 50%. But I have to find the slide to give you the exact number.
While he does that, and all these ballot measures and any pollsters or any other consultants that work on this, to have a successful campaign, usually in the polling, you want to be like in the 60s, because on election day, it's going to drop. And if you're polling around 62, 65, you're going to end up probably around 55, somewhere in the mid 50s or lower 50s. If you're already polling in the unincorporated only, in the early 50s, you're going to drop into the 40s, and that's going to tell you you're almost guaranteed to have a failure of a campaign. The only other points I wanted to bring up was on litigation. The case in Santa Cruz was very different because there was somebody who has been involved in numerous previous lawsuits. We don't have that here in Monterey County, and in fact, in Santa Cruz, they passed the sales tax in 2022. They didn't have a challenge. There was no challenge until recently by this particular individual. We don't have that here, so I just wanted to point that out. And the only other point I would bring up is that even though it's a general tax, the Santa Cruz County Board of Supervisors did pass a resolution to tell the voters that if this were approved, this is how they were going to aim to spend that money. So it's not locked in through the ballot measure, but they did pass a resolution so the voters know that these were the particular areas where they were going to focus on the priorities of how to spend that in that county, just so you know how they addressed that and conveyed the message in their voter education efforts as well.
Would that be, I appreciate your comments. I'm just curious whether or not having a separate resolution that we would be able to use as a media piece, so to speak, that would not be in violation of the 60% versus 50% plus one? Because it says it's
So-
announcing our intent.
The Santa Cruz ballot and the resolution that we have lists quite a variety of things that it could be used for: roads, homeless services, mental health, disaster recovery. So as long as the ballot measure is not specifically earmarking the funds to go to a specific, like 25% to the road fund,
Okay.
but discusses in general what the funds may be used for, and there's a variety, it should meet the requirements of a general tax.
Thank you.
So the slide that you were referring to is in front of you, and as you can see, overall, it was a positive 61%, but when you look at the unincorporated area of the county respondents, was only about 50-50. So it could be a positive or not, depending on how well this is communicated to the public and if they see the benefit of it.
I do want to point out that I believe there were only 94 unincorporated residents that were polled, and that the margin of error is 10%.
Yes,
which,
it's a large margin of error, yes.
Well,
I know my district has people who actually vote, regularly and are pretty adamant about things. And I like the 64% I'm seeing.
There is a motion pending.
yes. I'm just waiting to see if there are any other comments. So we have a,
Back up. All right, thank you.
sorry, did you want something back up here?
Yeah, the slide, I was still looking at it's like a tease, comes and goes. There it goes. So I see the split between unincorporated and incorporated at the bottom, but the slides by district, those are overall, correct? Or are they by unincorporated?
I believe they are overall. They were not looking at incorporated versus unincorporated.
Oh,
Yeah.
that changes
Just-
things.
yeah, 'cause you
Yeah,
were-
thank you. Yeah,
yeah.
thank you. That changes my perspective.
Any other comments or requests here for information?
I'm just concerned we're taking the weaker position on the initiative. I'm just putting that.
I understand that. I'm looking here at a large degree on process on what happens here. I know Supervisor Alejo and I have a different view on process on this, but that's fair enough. It's just a different point of view. So we're going to bring this to are we ready for a vote, or does anybody want more information here? I see Supervisor Lopez is still sitting here sort of undecided, so that's why I'm kind of waiting to try to see if you have any other questions or comments to make.
Are there any other possibilities here?
Do we don't by chance happen to have a breakdown by Supervisor District on unincorporated, do we? Yeah, that would be potentially small, but I mean, I don't even know where these 96 voters are coming from, if they're heavy in districts 2 or 3 or 5 or what, or if they're all East Garrison folks in District 4.
Yeah, I don't believe we do have that per district on the unincorporated area only. I'm looking at the slides and I don't see it.
So I don't want to sound like an alarmist or anything, but I do want to pose the question of what will we do should the sales tax not pass, as we look to the future as well, specifically? I think that's
I don't think that's a legal question, so to speak. I mean, the county has options to bring, another tax measure at the next election if it doesn't pass.
Yeah, we would have to look at the gubernatorial election 2026 or the next presidential 4 years from now in 2028.
Legally, are we in a different footing if we do, say, run it as unincorporated only and it loses and then we bring it back as incorporated? Are we providing fuel for a fire?
Are you, advertising it to potential litigants? maybe.
And, I do want to point out the other problem we have is, just from the numbers we look at here where there's support in incorporated areas, that doesn't take into consideration that there are sales tax ballot measures coming on and at least two, well, perhaps more. I mean, I think there might be something on the peninsula too coming on a tax issue, but we're also looking at the city of Salinas, which has about 40% of the population of the county, potentially having a 1% sales tax, which both of these being on isn't going to look good, however that may be to the voters.
Yeah, but I would say, so speaking for Salinas, if there's just only an extension, that's a very different question than an increase. I think they're only looking to extend the 1 cent sales tax from Measure G, which is a public safety measure. That's a very different question than raising it within the city of Salinas. So I just wanted to make that clear.
So as I'm sitting up here thinking through this, I think the only way it's going to pass in my district and probably yours, Glenn, and your Mary in this particular frame is if there is a resolution that has an extremely strong commitment to investment in roads.
Mm-hmm.
I think without that, then we might as well just not go through the exercise because I don't think it's going to be fruitful. So if there's a commitment to have a resolution that follows up with that strong commitment, as strong as legally possible, I can support that. But I think we're picking the tougher road. And it's not the rougher road because we have enough of those in our districts, the tougher road. But I'm looking for, I think without that, I can't support it. So if there's a commitment to that, I can support it. But I just want to acknowledge Supervisor Alejo's comments. We are picking the much tougher road in this instance.
And just on the question of litigation, we brought this up last time, but there actually was, in the case in Santa Cruz County, there was a challenge to try to change the ballot question that was approved by the Santa Cruz County Board of Supervisors in December before it got placed on the ballot. And on that case, and that legal challenge, on the very question that we're talking about, the Superior Court judge ruled against the challengers of the ballot measure, did not agree with the legal argument and allowed all voters to be able to decide that ballot question.
I believe there's still a legal.
Yeah, but this was a question whether you would remove it from the ballot. We're asking, would we get challenged? Would they be successful? Well, in that case, they didn't. Yeah, the litigation continues afterwards on a full hearing, but it did not get removed or changed before the March 5th primary.
Council, did you have a comment you want to make?
Just that you cannot specifically earmark a percentage for the ballot, but certainly road funds are something that could be considered for use, and Ezekiel has his hand up.
My hand, the real hand, not the virtual hand. So what I wanted to bring to your attention is that the actual ballot measure language that you have in front of you as part of your board report mentions items that are important that this measure will fund, and that includes road and safety programs. So that will mean road improvement. We will also focus on items like street maintenance, repair, libraries, county parks. So it has that. So I think that the commitment from this board, you approve this, is already there. I think that it's just a matter on how that is distributed, and you make that decision as you go forward. I think that you could have that commitment. I think that all of you agree as the board members that roads are important within the county. And you have made that commitment year after year by providing general fund dollars in addition to the road fund dollars. So I think that that is something that you could agree as you make the motion that could help. Just bringing that into context. And I know that the most difficult part will be whether you do it incorporated versus unincorporated area, because if you go to the unincorporated area only, it's probably a conflict and it's probably likely to fail with opposition. If you look at something that you look at the entire county, it's probably more likely to be successful, but at the same time, you also have other challenges. So as I said, I don't envy your position, but you do have to make a decision as a whole. Unfortunately, it's not only one of you, it's at least four of you that have to make this decision.
Thank you.
And can I speak just on one road on Bradley? Because the one is so bad that Monterey Salinas Transit, we got an email from Carlos Sidoric that it was so bad that they had to cancel the route through Bradley because it was damaging the buses there. So if this were successful, I just want to do an early plug-in for that road
That
in
was
Bradley.
from yesterday. I have not had the chance yet to respond to the email, but it is part of Randy's plan. Public Works does have a plan to rehabilitate Bradley. And our last round of funding, as we talked about, focusing on the communities that are public facing, that piece is done. But all the roads that come in are not on that plan, and those are just as bad as the roads in town. But it is the bane of my existence is the calls on roads. So that's why if we're making a commitment that is going to be a priority here amongst the majority, then I can support this route. But I'm acknowledging we're taking the tough road.
So could I?
I share your bane.
Oh, my God. Carmel Valley Road is a public embarrassment, truly an embarrassment. So my question is this, as I look at the resolution, could we today change the order in which I think it's the second whereas, where it says, whereas the funds collected from the increase in sales tax will be used to provide funding for critical services, including but not limited to reduce homelessness, enhance public safety, emergency service and disaster response, prevention and recovery, traffic and road safety programs. It's so buried, maintenance and pothole repair. If we could reverse the order and have that be the very first one, I think that would make a huge difference because people aren't going to drill down, but they will see, oh, it's for the roads. Yes, let's do this.
You certainly can, and perhaps you want a friendly amendment to your own motion, but as long as you're giving us specific language as far as putting that first in that description, we certainly can do that.
Can we repeat it? Roads, roads, roads.
Shall I go ahead and list how the order in which I would propose they be?
Sure.
As part of a friendly amendment to my motion that will probably never have the opportunity to be voted on. But I would recommend that we change it to enhance public safety, emergency service and disaster response, prevention and recovery, traffic and road safety programs. Let's see. No, actually, I'm so sorry. I think we should start with street maintenance and pothole repairs, then emergency services and disaster response, prevention and recovery, homelessness, reduce homelessness, libraries, parks, recreation facilities, water and sewer infrastructure maintenance. Did I get enhanced public safety in there yet?
I think that was after roads, you put that in.
Okay. Healthcare and job skill development programs.
Can I add one more, which is clean drinking water? I would still like to see us invest in some form and assist in a solution for San Lucas. And I think that would be a great message for us to send that community as well as the rest.
Clean and affordable water. Drinking water.
Supervisor Askew, I believe you seconded to that. Do you take that as, okay, so that's what's before us then. I think we're ready for a vote on this then. For those in favor of that amended motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Nay. Okay. Motion passes 4-1.
I'd like to make another motion, though. And
yes.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe we should have done this in a different order, but I'd like to make a motion that we also place the TOT measure on the ballot at the, and Glenn, if you can restate what you had proposed, I just want to be clear on.
Sure. That would be a suspended or delayed implementation until January 1st, 26, except for the short-term rental increase. Let me redo that again. So it would, the motion would be for a 5% increase on short-term rentals, which would take effect upon approval by the voters, and then a delayed implementation on on the TOT for non-short-term rental facilities, and it would be delayed until 2026, and then in 2028, and it would be delayed until 2026, which would go up 0.5%, in 2028, 0.5%, and then 2030, 0.5%.
Okay, so I'd like to, just so that we're clear on, we did a combine, we did separate. I just want to be clear for the record. I do share the concern that unincorporated, there's a potentiality of that not passing. And also I'm looking to avoid being in litigation. So that was my perspective on that. But given the reality and the risk that we're taking, that we just agreed to take with putting something on the ballot that could potentially not pass, we're then looking at waiting 2 or 4 years before we have another opportunity for high voter turnout where you would want to bring something back again. This would be a backup option that our polling tells us would almost certainly pass and is respectful of what we're hearing from hospitality about the need to take a measured approach moving forward. So that's why I'd like to make this motion as a standalone motion. And I recognize, Supervisor Church, that you compromised and were willing to come along with something that you had initially indicated that you weren't supportive of without having this TOT measure attached to it. I think the TOT, we talk about roads, the TOT measure, our current financial policies do put 25% of all TOT generated directly into roads. That's already in our policies, and that's been our practice for many years. Although we have the opportunity to change that, it is a historic, very clear commitment to maintaining the areas of unincorporated Monterey County. So I'd like to make that motion.
I'll second that motion and do point out that I think it's a stronger case if we are including both of them in there. I think it's I think it kind of looks bad that we're asking working people to pay a 1% increase while visitors who come into this county with thousands of dollars to spend, we're basically saying we feel that they shouldn't be paying maybe $7 or more for a $300 room or whatever the exact numbers is that were brought up in the past. That we shouldn't be just putting the burden on the financial issues that the county has upon the people in this county, but we should take advantage of every means that we do it. And people who come here who have money to spend are using our resources and should be able to contribute to them proportionally. And as you pointed out, it does cover 25% of the roads. It also, money goes out to community-based organizations, and as well, a higher TOT means a higher percentage for promoting hospitality. And I think I and both you, Supervisor Askew, have expressed that we are supportive of 6% of a raise into 6% during our budget discussions of the TOT being used for hospitality promotion, and that be a steady and consistent number and not being fluctuated up and down. So hospitality has as a means to be able to go through and develop some long-term planning as well.
Could we, I think, is there some confusion about the things that we have voted on? Are you straight?
No, so my confusion was just on the difference. I mean, I get the difference in terms of the front piece on the sales tax that we just were able to broker. But this piece, there's no changes from the last one, right? As proposed.
No changes, just a vote on each item individually. To be very clear about where, I want us to be very clear about where we stand, what the reasons for voting yes or no might be. Supervisor Alejo made it clear that he's not voting in support of tax on that doesn't include countywide, but I think I just want to make sure that we're all, that we've had the opportunity to discuss each item independently.
So would this also be countywide, or would this be unincorporated?
This would be countywide.
How do you want countywide?
So
because that's what's required. There isn't an option.
Because it's a different legal requirement. So we're looking. So I'm looking straight like legal requirements. I'm looking, and let me be. My intention is to make sure that the county's in a strong financial situation. That I think is our duty and our responsibility. We just agreed to put a measure on the ballot to prevent legal challenges to us later, but that possibly is not going to generate the revenue that we need to operate the county in a fiscally prudent manner into the future. So that's why I'm saying that I think we also need to have a TOT in order to make sure that we have revenue available to us to meet the needs of all of the things that the county requires us to provide for. And there were reasons why we maybe didn't have votes on the combined motion. We separated the motion into two parts, so this is the second part of that first motion.
So can I just ask a clarifying question then? Are you saying then that what you're proposing is to, yes, go ahead and add an additional tax item on the ballot for TOT, and it would be TOT and STR?
Yes, so the initial motion was to put two items on the ballot.
Correct.
We then separated it and said, let's put one item on the ballot. I'm now talking separately about the second item.
Thank you so much for your patience.
I want to be clear, just because we're talking about the RYs, right? And on the last, I don't want to be caveated into the legal challenge was not my concern on the last one. So just when we talk about that, that was for some people, but not for me. I don't think that was the key there. For me, it was more trying to get to a place where we had 4 votes. It wasn't about that piece. On this particular measure, I've already stated and will restate that I cannot support it, because I've had clear discussions with my cities who wish to raise their TOT, and I would rather we do it all at once and have a clear initiative where we're all preaching from the same book, talking about the same issue. And that's not what we're going to be doing here. We're going to be going on our own. We're going to be going on to what's already a crowded ballot. We just talked about what we're going to, who is going to see this, who isn't going to see it. Now we're adding one that's going to be countywide, so this will be layered on top of whatever happens with Measure G in Salinas, the proposal in Gonzales, the proposal in King City. I'm not there. I don't think that for what the hole that we're trying to fill, which I want to be clear is a projected hole. I want to praise our county staff, specifically on the budget side, for what they've done. We've just passed a balanced budget. I get that in projections we have some challenges. Again, those are projections. Nobody can tell us what's happening in the economy. If the market turns and interest rates drop, that's going to turn quickly. That's our reality right now. And yes, we can still do some budget tightening, but I think we all ran for office to do more. The reason I'm supportive of this particular sales tax that we just put forward is because I think we can do more, and that more needs to happen in communities like the ones that we're talking about, with road issues, with water issues, and I'm prepared to help make that happen. But on this other TOT piece, I would rather move in solidarity with the other jurisdictions who would also like to see theirs go up, so today I can't support that.
Mr. Chair, I want to just respond to some of the comments, because it's hard for me to sit here and hear some of my colleagues say, even though the last vote that was just taken, you're already recognizing that it's likely to fail. So therefore, we should have another ballot, like a backup to it. I think there's a golden opportunity here to do something right. We're going to be asking people to volunteer their time, whether it's county staff on non-county time or community volunteers. You're going to have to ask people to support and donate. If they know this is likely to fail, how are you going to generate the money to have a successful campaign? How are you going to generate people to come out and want to spend their vacation time or come volunteer when you guys already recognize that it's likely to fail because the way you set it up? And then you're contradicting yourself by saying, previously you were arguing that the other cities might consider it, so we should only have it, but now you're actually adding another item, wanting to add another item on the ballot. So before you were saying one thing, now you're saying, contradicting yourself by saying, now I want to vote to add a second item, despite what you previously said about other cities having their competing measures as well. That's hard for me to hear. But the chair said something earlier, trying to frame it. I would frame it a different way. He was framing it why ask for the sales tax and not ask for the TOT from the voters. I think where previously we've repeated, that's a question for another day. We recognize that we want to have a united campaign, a clear message to voters, not stack the crowded ballot issue, not have multiple ballot measures. So that's why on this opportunity, considering what's else on the bond measures are going to be on the November ballot, having one message really made a lot of sense. Now you're muddying the waters again. And the issue that we didn't want to have was opposition from hospitality, or that hospitality would sit out and not support your other ballot measure. They could either support it, sit it out, and have no support, or they could come out in opposition of it. And that's the reason. That's the reason why we said it makes sense. We're already behind on the times from when other counties started educating voters on their potential sales tax. We're starting late in the game. There's a lot of work that would need to be done from now through November. And then you're asking to double the efforts on two ballot measures rather than one. I think it's hard for me. I see an opportunity to have a real effort to be successful, to generate $29 million, and the votes that you're taking are undermining that. You're contradicting your own points, and you're undermining an effort to have a successful campaign. You're losing people here, and you're putting a ballot question that people are going to recognize is likely to fail. So why am I going to contribute our limited resources for an effort that we know is not even going to be successful? So it's going to have a ripple effect, not just your vote, not just the potential polling and dropping from the 50s down to the 40s, but the potential people that could have a successful effort are not going to be there because they already recognize that you set this up for failure from the beginning.
Well, we don't know if this is going to succeed or fail. The poll is really inaccurate with a 10% margin of error. And there is a difference between sales taxes, which are being proposed in cities, and a TOT tax. And the big difference on that is that a TOT tax residents do not pay for. Nobody in Monterey County pays for that unless they are actually going to stay at at some facility in the county, which is a minute amount of the population. So
I do. When the conferences are in here, the county can't cover it, so I got to pay out of my pocket when we have RCRC or CSAC in Monterey.
Okay, well, that don't.
We're talking about,
I don't think that's the concern for most of the regular voters out there. Which again, I'll point out, the TOT is not a tax on the residents. The sales tax is, and that is the big difference between the two.
And I'll just share, I think, something that we know. This is inside baseball. When we say TOT, we know what we're talking about. But the effort that it's going to take to educate the public on the fact that, like you said, most people don't pay this is, to me, part of the stress and this late in the game and going alone versus leveraging a joint message with other jurisdictions. That's my concern, because as I've talked to community about this and I explained, this is what's happening. We have two possible initiatives. Every single time they say, what is TOT? And I have to go back and explain, right, and walk them through that process. And this late, with the muddy waters and everything else that's already coming for this fall, that's why I'm so worried and don't think now's the right time.
I understand your points onto here. I mean, obviously, we don't have 4 votes to go on this with anyway, but we do have a motion, and Supervisor Askew is just trying to place things out in clarification.
For the record, did you second?
I did second it. Supervisor Adams, you had any more comments?
No, I think it's all been said.
All right, so we can put this motion to a vote then. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay. Motion fails, 2-4-3 against. With that, is there any other items anybody wants to raise onto this? Seeing none, we can adjourn the Monterey County Board of Supervisors, but we do have some other budget matters that have to be taken up on some of the districts. So we will now call to order the Bronda County Sanitation District. May we have the roll call, please?
Good morning, everybody. Let the record reflect that all directors are here and present.
Thank you. Are there additions or corrections?
We do not.
Are there any general public comments on items not on the Bronda County Sanitation District's agenda? I see nobody in the chambers. Nobody online. We do have a consent calendar item that's on number 1. Is there any public comments on this item? I see none. Mr. Vega, you don't have anything to really present on any of these? I'm just want to clarify.
Correct.
Okay. With that, is there a motion to approve the Bronda County Sanitation District consent calendar?
So moved.
Moved by Supervisor Adams. Second, second Supervisor Alejo. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. We'll adjourn that district, and we'll now take up the East Garrison Community Services District. We call to order that and have the roll call.
Good morning, everybody. Let the record reflect that all directors are here and present.
Are there any additions or corrections?
No.
Are there any general public comments on this item?
Nobody on Zoom, nobody in person.
See nobody here. That will close general public comment. Move the consent calendar onto this. Is there any comments on this particular item? And I see none. We'll look for a motion on the East Garrison Community Services District. All right, that was a motion first. We need a motion. A motion by Supervisor Alejo, then second. Okay, sorry, I didn't hear you, Supervisor Alejo. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. With that, we'll adjourn East Garrison and call to order the East Garrison Public Financing Authority. We have the roll call, please.
Good morning, everybody. Let the record reflect that all directors are live and present.
Any additions or corrections?
No additions and corrections.
Any general public comments? I see none. We'll take up the consent calendar onto this. Is there any general public comments on the consent calendar? I see none. We'll bring it back here for a motion from the board on East Garrison. So moved by Supervisor Alejo. I'll second it. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We'll adjourn to East Garrison Public Financing Authority and call to order the Pajaro County Sanitation District. May we have the roll call, please?
Good morning, everybody. Let the record reflect that all directors are here and present.
Are there any additions or corrections?
We do not have any additions and corrections.
Any general public comments? I see none. We move to the consent calendar. Is there any general public comments on the consent calendar? And I see none on that. Bring it back here for a motion. I'll move to approve. Second by Supervisor Alejo. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We'll adjourn that district and move to the successor agency to the redevelopment agency of the County of Monterey. We have the roll call, please.
Of course. Good morning, everybody. Let the record reflect that all directors are here and present.
Any additions or corrections?
No additions and corrections.
And we'll open for general public comments, and I see none. We'll then move to the consent calendar. Are there any comments on the consent calendar? With that, we'll bring it back here to the board for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Moved by Supervisor Adams, second by Alejo. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We'll adjourn and move to the successor housing agency to the redevelopment agency of the County of Monterey. May we have the roll call, please?
Yes. Good morning, everybody. Let the record reflect that all directors are here and present.
Any additions or corrections?
No additions and corrections.
Do we have any general public comments? I see none. We'll move to the consent calendar for any public comments on this item. And there are none on that. Bring it back for a motion to the board. So moved by Supervisor Alejo, second by Lopez. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. With that, we'll adjourn that agency and move to the Board of Supervisors of the Monterey County Water Resources Agency. May we have the roll call, please?
Of course. Good morning, everybody. Let the record reflect that all supervisors are here and present.
Any additions or corrections?
No additions and corrections.
Are there any general public comments on this agency? I see none. Move to the consent calendar. Item number 1. Any public comments? I see none on there. And with that, we'll bring it to a vote here. If anyone wants to make a motion, I should say. Motion by, okay, ask you and Alejo. Now we'll bring it to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. And with that, we'll adjourn. And that is, yes.
I want to ask you to adjourn in memory of the San Francisco legend, the Giants, Willie Mays, who passed away last Tuesday. He started his career in the Negro Leagues and ended up his career in the Major League Baseball, playing for the Giants and for the New York Mets. So if we could rest in peace for Willie Mays, number 24, the legend, would appreciate it. Thank you.
Very good comment. I remember being about 12 or 13 and up at Candlestick with my dad, and he was about ready to hit his 600th home run, and he hit his 599th, and that sticks out in my mind as one of my memories from Candlestick.
Nice.
What is Candlestick? Just
a place
Over there near
very similar to the
Stadium,
Arctic.
where the 49ers always played.
All right, any other comments then before you adjourn or close everything for the meeting here today? Yeah, good. Thank you.
Rest in peace, Willie Mays.
We'll be back on June 25th on the regular board meeting.